Hey guys, and welcome to week number 3 and our fourth football game of the upcoming season, as the Rio Hondo Prep Cares are currently 3-0 and headed on the road to Marquez High School on a Friday for the first time all season, which is really, really special. I am doing the pregame show here on Tuesday evening, and I was really thinking about uh, what I wanted to do this week. I had already recorded an episode or an interview with our guest today, who is at Mr. Dean Sloan. If you guys follow on social media, we will be getting to his interview very soon. It's about 45 minutes. And, on the pregame shows, I'm here to talk about the upcoming game. I'm here to talk about the um, upcoming opponent and, where the team is at, and maybe talk about a rule or something, and just kind of promote Rio Hondo Prep football. And, as I'm driving around in my truck the past 2 days for FedEx, my mind gets wandering. And, this is how I come up with a lot of ideas. Just I'm by myself all day, really, and I really like my job for that reason, because I get to brainstorm and think of things. But I got to tell you, my heart right now is with so many of our firefighters, and that's a big reason we had the intro music there with no words, just a movie score from the movie Backdraft way back in the '90s. One of my favorite movies as a kid, and truth be told, movie scores is really my favorite music out there. I like country, classic rock, hip hop. I like all these different things, and I try to put them all into the podcast as we, start a new week with a new song, kind of a theme, or just kind of a song that's really on my heart. And I said, you know what, we got a lot of guys out there from Rio Hondo Prep, former graduates that have gone on and gone into service as firefighters. And when you look to the hills, wherever you're living in Southern California, it's just smoke everywhere. I was out in industry, all day today and yesterday, and looking out at the hills, kind of over here, Azusa Canyon and everything, and it just looks like a giant mushroom cloud. And to think that we have a lot of brave souls who have gone into those hills to fight those fires for us. It just got me thinking about all the Rio alums that have gone and become firefighters. And I posted something on Monday night talking about Larry Pollock, who is a big time firefighter out there, I believe the Rancho Cucamonga department. And, they shipped him up to fight the fires. And so he's a father of one of our current players. And I know Larry, I don't know if he's able to be at the game or watch the game this last Friday, but I know he follows the podcast. He follows our social media updates and everything. So it does my heart good knowing that the updates and things do matter to people, and that people don't just look back at them, but they see it in real time. And I just want to give a shout out really to our firefighters, whatever department they're in, all of them really, but especially the Rio guys, because I'll tell you, if you're a Rio guy going to be a firefighter, which so many of them have, um, uh, the fire's in trouble. If you know what I mean. It's an opponent that our Rio guys are ready for. And I just kind of was brainstorming. Larry came to mind, thoughts and prayers, the prayers for the Cares, if you will, because you're still a Care, even though you graduated. Larry Pollock, my classmate, Jordan Ross, who's a LA City guy, but I was hearing he was going to have to be sent up the hill or to one of the fires soon. Jason Wiley, I heard, had to go somewhere, and he came back safely. Isaac Holgan, Jake Lang, who I believe is out in Idaho, Carlos Ortega, sophomore back when I was a senior. I know I'm forgetting some names, but I just thought with the pregame show this week, with so much going on, and the fire damage, and we got guys that throw on the gear and run to the situation to help and to make a difference. And it just goes to show the type of young men that Rio Hondo produces. We talk about it all the time. Christian leadership, and no matter what field you go into, it's not about yourself. It's in service to others and making a difference. And we preach that to the young men constantly. They hear it on the podcast. They hear from alumni from the past and everything. But when you see those fires in the hills, and we get them every year, right? Um, my thought goes to the guys that are running up the hill, if you will, throwing the gear on. Last week was really hot in Southern California. Our guys had to practice, the football players, in the heat, put the pads on, and I know it was miserable. But you know what's, I'm assuming, a more miserable is throwing on that fire gear and being outdoors and fighting an enemy, really, an opponent, really, that is relentless. It will suffocate you. And I talk with my buddies here and there about some of their journeys into some of these fires and things, and they pretty much move on in the conversation. But it's like, no, you're one of those guys we see on TV. You're the guys running into the flames, right? And as I was thinking about all that today, it also hit me the date on the calendar, and that is September 11th, when this episode will be released on Wednesday night. And that's a date that I always remember. And I was a junior in high school when 9/11 hit, which is, 23 years ago now. So I was the age of these young men, and that day still has such an impact on me. And I made a promise that I would never forget that. And these young men weren't born yet when that date happens, but I want them to know, if they're listening, to, about these firefighters, for instance, there's multiple fires everywhere in Southern California, right? And there's so many images from 9/11 that you remember. It was pretty much our Pearl Harbor, if you will. And as high school guys, we were like, oh man, what does this mean for us? And it was just, we didn't know what the future held. And it was just, there were so many acts of heroism that day, 3,000 plus people who died. But something that just always stuck out to me was the firefighters. And there was police officers who helped also. And I'm just saying the firefighters in general right now, because there were so many of them that perished. And I remember the look in their faces as, you're trained to run into a burning building. And again, I'm not trying to preach or anything here on the podcast. We're supposed to be talking about the game and Mr. Sloan interview, but this is on my heart, and I need to say these things. As you know, our thoughts are with so many firefighters out there. And I just got word, actually, about another related fire that I'll tell you after this. But the looks in those firefighters, I remember thinking to myself, as I saw them as a junior in high school, watching the footage of these guys approaching the World Trade Center. And as a 16-year-old, I went, wait, what are they going in there for? What are they possibly going to do at the top of that building? They can't put that fire out. There can't be elevators. They got to walk all the way up those stairs. If they get there, who knows how much time they'll have. All of those guys who went into that building, they had to be terrified. But I just remember the resilience in their faces, like, we need to go help people. People are stuck up there. And I'm not going to get too graphic about all this, but the people that ended up jumping, you have to really think how awful it was up there for that to be your decision. So I just remember that with the firefighters, seeing them go up the stairs, dozens of floors, being exhausted, and they had to know they were not going to make it. And so I guess we find motivation in so many different places, and that's the kind of motivation I find, that I've carried with me when times get tough for me, or it's a little warm, and I'm like, I don't have to have fire gear on right now, running up a mountain or running up the World Trade Center that's going to collapse on me. Those stories of heroism are just so incredible and moving. And we talk a lot about the military, on the podcast, and it's natural with like football, right? The military, the warfare, and the gridiron, and the field general, and all those things, just kind of built in that way. But it kind of, with this, what's going on right now, I don't know. We talk so much about Rio Hondo guys and Rio Hondo graduates, and there's so many of, and again, I'm sure I've forgotten some names. Those are some names that just popped in my head right now. There'll be some future firefighters too, but I know there's so many guys from Rio Hondo are wearing a different uniform, and I'm glad they're on our side, if you know what I mean. And we talk about the military, we talk about service, right? We had a great episode with Major Bill Lee from the United States Marine Corps in the summer, right? And I just received word. It does appear that, and you guys will know more about this tomorrow, I'm sure, but it does appear there is a fire near Mount Kare, and Bill Lee is up there. We're on a group text here, and the update I'm reading is an update from Bill. He didn't write it, his brother did. He said, Bill is currently trying to put the fire out at upper camp. The wind is not blowing towards him, and he's safe for now. So we got a lot of guys in this group chat praying. And, Bill's not a firefighter, but the only kind of thing I thought to say in there was, well, that fire doesn't stand a chance if Bill Lee's there. But there's Bill Lee doing his thing and protecting Mount Kare. I know Bill Lee is a dear friend of Mr. Sloan, who you're going to hear from here shortly. And Mr. Sloan obviously has high praise for Bill. So, yeah, there's just epic pictures up there, a lot of orange, and let's all pray. Bill is on this text chain, but he's a little busy right now as I record this at 7:30 at night on Tuesday. So there is a fire at Mount Kare, and Bill Lee in the upper camp is attempting to put it out. And the firefighters, they got a lot of ground to cover. I hope and pray that they do. They're able to, well, be safe, of course, but put out what they got to put out. And our thoughts and prayers are with them, man. Prayers for Kares. Prayers for Kares. It's a real thing. And I don't want to be super somber or anything on this. We got a football game to talk about this Friday, but I just want the young men to maybe carry some of the firefighters with them on the field this Friday. And last week, the boys played great in the heat. They fought. They looked better conditioned than the opponent. And I just want the guys, I guess, to understand that as hard as things might get this weekend or in the future, you know what? There's some Rio Hondo guys who are fighting the good fight right now, and not just the Rio guys, but all the firefighters. So think of those things, fellas. When things get hard, a little miserable, you don't want to run those sprints, whatever. Just my 2 cents as some motivation here, because we owe it to those guys who sacrifice for it. You've heard it before, and we talk about July 4th, and we get to play football in America, right? It's great. But as far as firefighters go, whether it's the guys fighting currently or, man, those firefighters that went in to climb those floors in the World Trade Center 23 years ago. I also challenge you guys, since you didn't get to experience it, to, do some research, check it up, read the history books on it. And in my opinion, you can look at all the wild stories and theories if you want. But to me, it's about the people, and it's about the stories. And some of the people who died were just unbelievable heroes. And firefighters, I don't know. Firefighters are on my mind right now. I'm on my heart. I said Jordan Ross, that's my brother right there, man. That's one of my very dear friends, teammate for life. So I'm sure everyone's going to be fine, but let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. And to the boys, man, I'd like to dedicate this podcast and the game itself to all the guys, firefighting up there. Larry, I know you're listening. Whenever you get to listen to this, man, you do us proud, and we appreciate it. I know we tease probably firefighters sometimes. I know I do. I'm like, oh, all you guys do is cook and work out all day, and then there's a tree and a cat in a tree. Oh yeah, go save it, whatever. But in all seriousness, it's a serious job. It's dangerous, and they put their lives on the line for us. So we appreciate you guys, and of course, there's other areas of service we've talked about. Police and nurses and doctors and all. But for right now, I'm just want to express some gratitude to our firefighters and say some extra prayers for those guys, because they're Rio Hondo guys. They're Kares for life. And again, I'm glad more and more Rio Hondo guys go into this profession. So to the boys listening, not trying to preach, just it's on my heart, it's on my mind, and I'm fight for those firefighters, man. Just I don't know another school that has as many firefighters per percentage wise, for instance, of the graduates. When you only got 15 graduates and maybe 2 of them become firefighters, well, that's a pretty good percentage. So anyway, I will get to our pregame stuff and to our conversation with Mr. Sloan, because it was rather special. And I know Mr. Sloan is a humble guy. He's very generous. For those of you that don't know about him, he was introduced to the Rio Hondo Prep program about a year ago through Mr. Bray, who kind of worked with him at their other professional at the hospital, I believe. And Mr. Sloan kind of fell in love with Rio football, especially that magical run last year. He has been quite a contributor, we'll say, a supporter, donor to the Rio Hondo program. And he did, in fact, receive the 2024 Kare Service Award, which was presented by the board of directors to an individual who has made an outstanding contributions to our organization. So he has done just that. And he's also, in fact, on the board of directors now for Kare Youth League. So you'll get some inside information there regarding all that. And very, very, very fun conversation with him upcoming. But real quick, since I kind of had another topic of conversation there today, I think the pregame show will be a little different. I don't want to ramble on too long about football rules or anything. I will look at our opponent coming up Friday, the Marquez Gladiators. We did play them last year. If you remember, they came to us and it was actually a nice game. They played us tough for, I will say, a quarter, almost a half. And then we pulled away from them, but a good football team that is currently 2-0, only played 2 games and had some big wins. They opened the season against Legacy out there in Southgate, I believe, and they won 28-6. And then last week defeated Hollywood 44-9. Last year, I believe I'm looking at this correctly. Marquez back in September of last year, Rio did pull away in that win, 42-14. So I think it was a little closer than the score indicated. As the Kares will be on the road this time. Rio Hondo's win last week. Let's see. 9 straight. Okay. We won't look at that, but Joshua Ayala for Marquez is kind of their one-man wrecking crew. He is number 10, it looks like, and he rushed for 184 yards on only 14 carries last week against Hollywood. So he's a guy that seems to be their primary back and their primary guy. So Ayala, number 10, got to keep an eye on him. Hopefully I don't have that number wrong, but 14 carries, 184 yards. And if you remember last week, it was Miles O'Malley for Maranatha who had 14 carries as well, but only 66 yards. And most of those came pretty late. So the Kare defense, run defense can lock down the running game, but I'm sure we may see a little different look here from Marquez. And I scouted out the stadium a little bit already. If you look at Google Maps and some of their social media photos and things, it does look like it's one side of bleachers. Nothing on, we'll say the visiting side. It looks like one set of bleachers that is kind of divided. There's like this little divider and then like a bleacher kind of that's a little separate. So I'm assuming that's kind of the visiting stands. Not sure how it's going to work, but doesn't matter where we go, right? Rio fans, we are ready to go, and we'll show up anytime, any place, anywhere. Huntington Park is where we are playing. The city it is, and don't forget the JVs play, I believe, at 4:00 on Friday as well. So 2 games in the same day. A lot of those guys who typically dress to kind of give us a little bigger roster won't be able to do so in this game because they have their own game at 4:00. And I believe there's still a one football game a day rule in high school football. Don't forget about the junior high program. I will mention them a little bit more here on the podcast. They have a game Saturday morning at Kare Park at 9:30 a.m. playing Chaminade, one of the big time football programs out there that just so happens to have a junior high team. So Rio, the junior high, beat Oaks Christian last week, 14-11, and they will be hosting Chaminade over there at Kare Park at 9:30 on Saturday morning. The post-game show, I will try to do a better job of having some scores for you from the week that was. We'll talk about briefly in the intro, maybe junior high football, JV football, and then I'll try to get you some varsity volleyball scores as well, because they're having a pretty good season. A little struggle in prep league action, but they've had some big time tournament wins throughout the season already. So they are in full swing as well. And you know what? There's plenty of content to talk about here on the Charge to Keep podcast, and so little time. And then with, again, things going on around Southern California, our thoughts and prayers are with so many. And, not just the fires themselves, but, the air quality for people and people having to move games and things. I think our game will be fine as it is out in LA County, but you never know. You never know. It's just when one fire gets put out, literally another one pops up. So anyway, we heard enough about that 9/11 and the firefighters doing the Lord's work, if you will. We'll try to just focus on Rio football here from the timeout. But as far as rules go, a rule check. I'm not going to get into anything too deep this week. We had the one thing I will say is we had another hurdling penalty on us again. And I was joking on the sideline kind of with the referees of like, if you know the signal, if you go ahead and call it, if you know the signal, and they didn't in fact signal, they just kind of pointed at us. And I think they got the yardage wrong too. I'm not here, by the way, anytime I bring up the rules or we show plays, good or bad, it is in no way, I'm going to say this every show if I can, it is never meant to embarrass, belittle an opponent or the officials by any means. We're just trying to learn something and be accurate. But the officials did, in fact, misenforce that. And in my opinion, they misapplied the rule because, as you remember last year when I talked about hurdling, you can't hurdle a stationary opponent. So that doesn't mean you got to be standing straight up and down, but a stationary opponent, you can't jump over that guy. The defender in the game when Noah Peninari did it, he was diving at Noah's waist, we'll say, going at his knees, and Noah didn't have anywhere to go but upwards and went vertical. So to me, that wasn't hurdling, and we see it kind of misapplied sometimes. And hopefully we'll get it right when the time matters. But I mean, our guys are jumping over people. I don't know what to say. Guys, don't jump over people, right? Try to keep your feet on the ground, make a move, and go by them. So that's the quick little I guess addendum I'll say about the rules this week, since my heart was kind of somewhere else with this podcast, and I've already gone probably 20 minutes, and it's time to get to our featured guest of the you guys will be hearing this in the evening, so it's still the evening for me. Featured guest of the evening. Do keep in mind, I recorded this with Mr. Sloan a few weeks ago, and it was in fact before the football season even started. So there won't be much to talk about the current season. And we even say pretty early on that we were both excited for the football season to get going. So that's just the way the podcast works sometimes. I try to keep it in real time as best I can, but with the schedule and, doing multiple podcasts on the weekends, sometimes doing it a few days early, you got to just stack them up if you can and to stay on time. And so that's what we're doing. And I just so happened to have Tuesday night free and decided, well, let me instead of doing it Sunday when the NFL was kicking off, after I'd already done the post-game show, I said, well, let's just save it for a few days from now. And I will, as one final reminder, continue to put out the pregame show on Wednesday nights, because I think, I don't know, it just fits a little better. It gives you guys a little more time to listen to it, maybe pass it along to someone or listen to it again. When the boys get off the practice field Wednesday night, the Wednesday night practice is 6:00, right? They'll have a fresh podcast to hear, maybe on the drive home or whatever. And Thursday night football, it's a real deal, whether it's college, the NFL. You know what? There was an open window Wednesday night. I figured that's a better night. I could put out a picture for the upcoming guests on Tuesday. I'm always trying to think ahead, right? And all of these things. Anyway, you guys are probably tired of listening to me ramble away, and I don't blame you. So I will step aside, take a breather, and play for you the recording I did with Mr. Dean Sloan a few weeks ago. I think you guys will really, really enjoy this one. A unique conversation with a great Rio Hondo Prep supporter. Let's get to him. Our featured guest for week 3, Mr. Dean Sloan. All right, we are now joined by Mr. Dean Sloan, who's coming to us from Las Vegas, Nevada, although he does reside here in Southern California. He is a big-time supporter, contributor to the Rio Hondo Prep football program. He's also on the board of directors for Kare Youth League. We got a lot to cover, a lot to get to, but let's say hello first. Mr. Sloan, good morning. How you doing?
I couldn't be better. We're just 1 week away from football season. Things are terrific.
Absolutely. Football season, is it's better than Christmas to me. It brings people together in a special way. There's all this hope right at the beginning of a season, whether it's a high school, a college, a pro team. And man, for guys like us, football junkies, it sounds like it's kind of nice having those 3 consecutive days, if you will, regarding football at all levels.
Definitely. And for me, people get excited about the Super Bowl. I don't, because I look at it as the funeral of football season.
Oh,
So,
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Absolutely. High school football is it's a special thing. I don't know that other. Well, I know this. It's kind of unique to America, as Coach Carson always says. And young men who don't play high school football, I feel bad for them, even if you don't hit the field. Just that whole experience and everything. So before we kind of get into the current football program and everything, where did your love of football start? Did you play it as a kid or in high school or grow up with it?
well, I went through Pee Wee football, starting at about 10 years old, and then on to 2 years of Damien.
Okay, got you. A proud Spartan there in Laverne. Very, very, very cool. They had a big win in their opening game, Coach Mr. Sloan, against who was that? Lacerna, I believe. So
Correct.
big win for the Spartans. Anyway, Mr. Sloan, you are on the Kare Youth League board of directors, and you had, we'll say, a unique path to that. I guess most people involved in the Kare program, grew up through it or had a connection, but yours is rather unique. Talk to us about kind of your connection to Kare Youth League and how that all started.
Oh boy, that's a great question. And before I get started with that, man, I really want to thank you for the podcast that you do, because if it's really been terrific for anybody, it's especially been me, because there's so many people involved with Kare that have that incredible, rich 30-year history with so many memories of people and events. And I was asked to come on to Kare a few years ago, and I'm still learning the people. But when I started listening to your podcast, I learned so much about Coach Carson's, the fact they had four daughters, Bill Lee, who was a friend of mine, and I still learn things about Bill Lee, Mr. Dowd. There's just so many people where I've got to see their rich history that I've never, have time to sit down with each one individually. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And answer to your question, I knew Robert Bray, and for anybody who knows Robert Bray, there's always an incredible quiet wisdom about Robert Bray. Um, we knew each other from Methodist Hospital, where we worked together. I was a lighting supplier to the hospital, and he invited me to the first event at the Rose Bowl. And we got to the Rose Bowl, and we're up in the suite, and you're looking down at thousands of kids playing soccer and running around and being active and sweating and communicating and leading and having a terrific time and doing what kids do. And after that point, you just say, wow, this is incredible. The more people you meet, um, the more you just fall in love with it. And then eventually you go to more events, and Kare just becomes part of your soul.
Mm. That is very well said. I think any parent who really had multiple kids go through the program can appreciate that. And no matter when you find Kare Youth League Rio Hondo in life, as a young child or late in life, it really is. It's interesting explaining Kare and Rio to people who haven't heard about it, because it's almost unbelievable when you think about it. It's kind of like you have to see it. I say this all the time about Rio Hondo football. You have to come see it to understand and believe in it. And I mean, what was it like for you? And because you've probably been told about it from Robert, but again, you had to come see it to kind of appreciate everything that it entailed.
The football program in particular?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I went to a few games, and uh, we had a good season, but I never knew how special our program was until we got to probably the Charter Oak game last year. Because the only measuring stick that you have sometimes is not just the quality of your players, but the
Mhm.
size of the schools that you're playing against. So, whether it was Damien or Glendora or Charter Oak, I was familiar with the size and the quality of the players. So when here comes Rio Hondo Prep to defeat Charter Oak, that was the moment where I said, there's truly something special here. And then moving on to the incredible season we had last year to finish with Santa Monica, that was just the icing on the cake. This is a very, not just a special football program, but a special sports program, in general.
And there was some adversity for our fans in that game. Obviously, the field, the stadium, or lack thereof, was not really up to par, in my opinion. But some of our fans had trouble getting in. You had a rather unique experience, if you like to share with us, as far as the CIF championship game went last year.
I had driven. I was working earlier that morning, so I had driven from Las Vegas all the way to Santa Monica. And I I just went into the valet parking. There was a hotel that was right next door because, parking was an issue as well. But once I finished with that, I went in and they said that, well, your name's not on the list. And like, I've never had to be on a list for any high school football game. So I said, look, I just drove about 8 hours. I'm going to watch this game. And like, well, stand over there and let's see what we can do. And, I stood there for about 5 minutes. So I took out $100 bill and I slapped it on the table and I said, "You guys work it out with whatever you got to work it out with, but I'm going to go watch the game." And I went over to the stands and I didn't even sit down. I actually stood the whole game.
But well, yeah, I think most of us did. Most of the people in the stands and the Rio faithful there. So, I asked some people as far as the very last play with Nathaniel Shine knocking down that pass. Do you remember kind of where you were in regards to the field and what that moment was like?
I was to the left side of the team because we were on actually the opposite side of when that play happened.
Oh, okay.
And if you can forgive me, I hate to quote Vince Scully because he's such an incredible person. But Vince Scully always used to say, "There's nothing more beautiful than the roar of a crowd." And to me, there's that one beautiful second before the roar of the crowd, and it was never ever been more perfect than that ball that Nathaniel hit down. So the events that transpired getting to that moment, and between the slide for the stopping on the 1 yard line, and not too much time left, and they come back, and then having to go for two, just everything was just as fever pitch as it could possibly be. So when they were going for two, and you see the quarterback throw the ball, and then all we could see was a hand went up and then he hit the ball, but then there was that, again, what I call that beautiful silence of a second where you're looking for a flag and you're just looking for something, and the stadium was quiet for just a second. And then all we really saw was the players running, which let us know that in fact the ball did hit the ground and the game was over. So it just couldn't have been better. So that's how I remember the game, and that's probably my favorite part was just that 1 second of just silence.
You're right. You're right. In some of the biggest sports events I can remember, yeah, especially when you're on pins and needles, that you just like this stress, this intensity, and you let it go for a half second or a full second, and then it's this uproar, this jubilation. So sometimes, yeah, I talked to some fans who were down at our end, kind of opposite of that, and kind of to have that kind of deep look of that final play. I don't know. It kind of give you the big picture of everything rather than being, too close to it and everything. So we all will remember that game and where we were and all that. So just a special team, a special finish. And I say it all the time, but I think the coaches put so much time and effort into our student athletes. And you sound like you've been around as well, Mr. Sloan. I've been around many different high school football programs as a former referee and everything. And I got to tell you, I think the Rio Hondo Prep coaching staff ranks up there amongst the best in the San Gabriel Valley, maybe even Southern California. They care, pun intended, and they put so much into this thing.
There's no doubt about it that our coaching staff is as good as it gets. And I'll give you a couple of examples as someone who didn't know the history of Kare on what they see objectively coming in if you're new to Kare.
Perfect.
Like the first thing that I noticed that said there's something special about not just the team, but particularly the coaching, is if there was a change of ball control, whether it's a punt or a kickoff, their team is still walking off the field, and our team is already off, and then we're already, have our kicking crew out there, or the offense is already in the field. They're just walking on the field. We've hustled off, and we've already got our next team on there. And
Mm.
that's just something that just, blaringly obvious that just comes down to good coaching. And good coaching and good leadership, you can tell when whether it's a teacher or a coach when they're demanding excellence from their players. But with Kare, it's different. They develop and they teach people to develop excellence or demand excellence from themselves.
Mm.
And there's a big difference between the two. So I think what Coach Carson's does and the rest of that incredible coaching team is when you can get players to demand excellence from themselves, it just takes everything to a higher level. So, and then of course there's the caring. There's an old saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm. I
And
love that.
that's probably what defines the teachers and the coaching staff of Kare in general.
Well, I want to kind of continue on that as a theme for our conversation today. You are someone that has always been involved really in leadership. You were an Army Ranger, made a couple of combat deployments. You have been the president and founder of GoGreenLighting.com, and you are someone that throughout your life has really thrived in leadership. And so I want to kind of tie that into the leadership that you see at Rio and Kare, and kind of because the motto at Kare is building Christian leaders, right? And as a matter of fact, they don't often call their coaches coaches; they call them leaders. In fact, so I want to talk about leadership today with you, and just kind of tying it all in there. We'll talk about you briefly here as far as your background. I mentioned you served in the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and then went to Panama in 1989. Just as a brief little summary there. Talk to me about your military experience, Mr. Sloan.
Well, comparing military experience and what you learn about leadership and how it applies to Kare, I'll try and connect the two with the story, if they can bear with me for a minute. But I was a 19-year-old kid, and I was right out of high school, and it was going into the military more for college money. Very you just don't expect you're going to be called to any combat situation. You're just there for a couple of years and like, okay, serve our country and get the college money, and that's what the thought was. And we were part of a rapid deployment force. And at that particular time, I was at Fort Ord, attached to 7th Infantry Division. And that's when the call came, and we were sent to Panama for the Noriega situation to go and capture Manuel Noriega. While we were there, we were charged with securing one of his many homes. And we had got there and we had secured the home. And the next morning, a general pulls up, and it's been long enough I can tell the story now. But a general pulls up, and he's got all of his little baby ducks following him, and the lieutenants and the colonels, and he walks in, and I'm a 19-year-old corporal, and
Yeah.
like, wow, like a general. I've never even seen a general before. And here's where the story gets interesting: is he walks around and he's like, "Where are you from, soldier? Great job. Did you need anything? Just the typical general stuff." And he walked in, he's walking around the house, and we're just like, wow, general. And he walked over to a painting that was above Noriega's fireplace, and he pulled the painting down. And a very young lieutenant, maybe 25 years old, said, "Sir, I can't let you take that painting." Now, if you know the difference in the military between a lieutenant and a general, it's like a goldfish against a great white shark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the general turned around and he goes, "Don't worry about it, Lieutenant. I'm going to return this painting to its rightful owner." Now, in my 19-year-old inexperienced mind, I was thinking, wow, what a great guy. I'd like to be that guy, to take the painting and go return it to its rightful owner. The lieutenant, who was from West Point, where integrity is built into your DNA, said, "Sir, I cannot allow you to take that painting." And that general turned around and for the next 5 minutes just berated that young lieutenant with words I'd never even heard of before.
Yeah.
And he took the painting. And it went on, he reported it, through his chain of command like he was supposed to. And his officers above him and said, "Don't worry about it. You went to West Point, you got combat experience, you got a great career in front of you, let it go." Went to above that, went above that, went above that. And everybody said the same thing, let it go. Don't worry about it. Look the other way. But this guy, that's not what they teach you at West Point. It's about integrity, because morals is how we treat our neighbors, but ethics is how we build societies. And that's how they teach ethics and integrity. So eventually he ran into another West Point general and he told him what happened after nobody did anything. And the general did an investigation, and sure enough, that general was relieved. And all those officers who did nothing about it were relieved of leadership duty as well. So it was an incredible story in integrity and doing the right thing. And if you just look around Rio Hondo in general, it's about integrity and character and leadership. And the basic rule of leadership is do the right thing. So in the back of my mind, and I'll share this with you, but I kind of see Rio Hondo as a small West Point, because that's what they teach over there. So it was a story that really changed my perspective on a lot of things, and that's another reason why Kare and Rio Hondo is so important to me.
Well,
Because
that's
leaders aren't born; they're developed.
no, that's a great point. And sometimes, let's say a lot of times doing the right thing isn't popular, so it's something I think is constantly preached to the kids, that they're going to go out into the big world sometime. And I think the West Point praise there is very high praise from you. And yeah, I think I always feel that when kids go through the Rio program, because there's so many different activities they participate in, I really do feel they're ready for some college or a fire academy, or they're ready for things more quickly than your average high school kid is, I think. And I had a teammate who actually went to West Point, went through that program and everything. And he even said that. He said, yeah, Rio prepared him for his experiences there big time. So you were in the military, I think, 2.5 years. You did receive 2 Army Commendation medals, Good Conduct Medal, and a Combat Infantry badge. So thank you very much for your service, sir. How long were you in the military, and then what'd you do afterwards?
At that point, after getting out of the military, I went into college, and I was also part of the National Guard in California. And in 1992, our unit from the National Guard was called to go to the riots in Los Angeles. And that was interesting because we left from Pomona and we were on trucks heading from Pomona to downtown LA to stop the riots. And so we were thinking that we were going to go stop crime, and we were going to do whatever we could about the looting and all the fires and everything. And we were just young kids, ready to go help. And it was a very interesting story, because as we were on the trucks going through the fires and the smoke and the looting and just seeing terrible things happening, they said, "We don't care. You get to USC and you protect USC campus. No matter what happens, you get to USC and protect the USC campus." So those were our orders.
I have heard that from a few people. So yes, protect that nice campus there in South Central at all costs. Wow, that's a crazy time indeed. It looks like you went to University of Laverne, so you stayed close to home there for college, and got involved in political science and government, and then eventually career wise, kind of where did all that take you?
I was one of the first executives for autotrader.com. People, are now familiar with autotrader.com, but it used to be just that old magazine that you would see at the 7-Eleven,
Yeah.
And we took that online, and I was an executive with Cox, for a while, and I was there for about 10 years, and autotrader.com just exploded, and where it's just no longer even a newspaper on the shelf at the 7-Eleven anymore. And it was a terrific learning experience for me, building that sales force and training that sales force, and um, being able to be part of something that was a startup from zero, and just watching the needle move, so quickly. And there's just too many lessons in there. Maybe that's for another day, because that's a lot of
Sure.
terrific lessons and stories there.
Yeah, I saw the VP of sales operations for Auto Trader. Eventually, a president founder of Sloan Investments, a startup company, says at Stanford University. So talk to me about that and kind of starting up that.
When I sure. When I left autotrader.com, I took a couple of years off, and I traveled around the world, and I thought, if you um, retired early, that's what you're supposed to do, and play a lot of golf and travel. And I had the privilege and the blessing of going around the world, all over Asia, all over the Middle East, all over Europe, and you realize you're just taking pictures in front of a bunch of old buildings, and it's a fun trip. And I got to play some of the nicest golf courses in the world, but I was mentally bored. I was spiritually bored. And you just realize that your aha moment comes to what really makes you happy. And you've got to know what makes you happy. It's the most important question in this world, is what makes you happy.
Mm.
And it's something that I tell my kids all the time. Like, and unless you find out, what makes you happy, you better pick something in the meantime, because there's nothing more important. To me, it's just being in a room full of smart people, being in a room full of smart and caring people, more important. So I went to Stanford University, and all the Stanford is such an incredible college. I mean, it just contributed so much to this country, building Silicon Valley, and all the good companies, Sun Microsystems, Hewlett Packard, Google, eBay, they all started from the dorm rooms of Stanford University. So, I went up there looking for some small startups to do some angel investing, and met a lot of terrific people. And it got to the point where we were able to help some kids with some ideas, and bring their idea to fruition, and validate it. And things were successful. So with Stanford, once you become part of that, I was asked to speak and do an online ethics class for their MBA program, and that is a lot of fun, because then you really get a chance to meet the students up there. And I've talked to kids from MIT and Caltech and Harvard, and most of the time at Caltech and MIT, I don't always know what they're talking about, but Stanford is just different. The Stanford kids just have so much to live up to, and there's such a rich history there, and they always feel like they're 5 years behind. And these are kids who are just truly brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing Stanford teaches them is that the world owes you nothing, but you owe the world everything.
I like that.
So,
I like that.
and that's kind of why I've got that connection with Stanford, and I appreciate talking up there when I get a chance. And that's how Stanford kind of came into play after that.
Wow, that's a lot going on, and yeah, for sure, it's nice to hear stuff like that. That you in today's world, it feels kind of the opposite at times. Like when the world owes you nothing, and you owe the world. That's kind of like the old JFK line, right? The old ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So yeah, it's good to hear that theme going on, and I think again that's a big one at Kare and Rio is service to others. Constantly. And you made mention to me a few weeks ago, I think, when we were talking, that you were impressed by the Rio Hondo Prep student athletes. What I don't know if it was the young men and the young women, but just the fact that how they talked to you, specifically maybe some seniors from last year's team, it had an impact on you. And if you'd share kind of what it was like with Rio Hondo Prep student athletes, and kind of how they stood out in a different way to you.
It is so clear and obvious when because I grew up with my kids, they went to public schools, and you meet their friends and you talk to them, and when you're talking to a Kare student or a Rio Hondo Prep football player, the first thing you're going to notice is the eye contact. And they're the students at Kare, that they've got better eye contact than some 50-year-olds, that I've met.
Mm.
So one thing that was glaringly apparent, that there was something different than most of the high school students who had met before compared to the Rio Hondo Prep students, was just the eye contact and the mindset. There's such an empathy and a amount of caring and a three-dimensional thought process, that there's just more to my life than me. And it's something beautiful that you don't see. And when I first got to Kare, I would ask people the same question. Like, coming from a corporate background, we're always trying to build a culture. Okay. And I would ask, like, how did you build such a beautiful culture here? And
Mm.
nobody could answer the question, because it was never intended. It just happens when you have that many caring, wonderful people whose focus truly. That there's an old saying that no man stands higher than when he stoops to help a child. That's kind of the Kare philosophy, and there's just that message of constant giving and giving to others and developing others, that they know that their life might have bigger meaning. And I'll, that's just one example of how special kids are. And I'm going to tell you what, my grandkids are going to Rio Hondo Prep. They're going to the Kare schools. So I don't care what my kids say. My grandkids are going there. So, but of course, then they're going to go there now that they know about Kare. I would say, just a final thought on that, knowing how special those kids are. I was talking with Colby and Josh at the last event we had just a week ago. And I asked them both, I said, when you're playing against a team like Santa Monica, and they're so much physically bigger than you, and if you remember number 78 and number
Yeah.
69 and number 71, they could stack the box with just three guys. And they just had enormous players. And at first I was like, oh wow. But when I talked to Josh and Colby, like, how do you guys mentally prepare for playing teams that are that big? They didn't even bat an eye. They're like, we're used to it. You
Mm.
know what? And it's not the size. You'd be surprised that sometimes the bigger guys don't hit as hard. But you can't go into that with that mindset. They said you get there, you hit them first, and the game is controlled from there. But we're so used to it, it's not even an issue anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, where else are you going to find a student who's going to be able to answer a question, like that? So,
Well, you talked about it, the culture, the environment. I mean, the continuity, really. It's a tale as old as time, really, for Rio. Whether it's the 60s when the program started, the 70s, 80s, 90s, the 21st century. It has been kind of that constant us against the world. And even though we've earned a great deal of respect, it's still kind of this constant chip on our shoulder. When we're not ranked here or we're not mentioned among certain schools, it's kind of like, good. We like that. It's fuel. It's constant, the constant David and Goliath, right? That just never gets old. And when you think Rio Hondo can't do something, it's like, come watch another game. Come watch a big one. And I don't know. That's built into the culture. And I think Coach Carson, Coach Drain, all the coaches throughout history have it's kind of embodied that. And it's something that if you come to Rio Hondo, you're going to be expected to do things that maybe you didn't think you could do, or definitely other people don't think you can do.
the best way I can answer that is in a small message that the board wrote to the football team as they went to state last year. And the message read, I'll paraphrase, but whenever the storm is too big, whenever the storm is too strong, whenever the storm is too tough, always remember that the real storm is you.
I like that.
So that's the only way that you can have that little quiet wisdom and strength about you, knowing that if you're not ranked in one certain place, it doesn't matter because it all comes at the end of the season anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about the preseason; it's about the postseason. And I think the coaches have always said that it's not so much about what other teams do, what others. It's about you and being your very best, almost competing with yourself more than the opponent, really, to kind of get yourself in the best possible position to be successful. And I think you can uh, confirm all that in your many different leadership positions as well. And I think that is again why the kids shine brightly throughout the program, either while they're in it or afterwards. And I want to ask you, you mentioned the board there, and we kind of talked about it early on. Um, uh, for those that don't know, and Rio Hondo graduates and Kare Youth League does have a board of directors, and you were on that amongst some of the other elder statesmen of Kare Youth League, if you will. And again, you're unique in the sense that you didn't come up through Kare Youth League and everything. So how did that all come about with you being on the board, and kind of, I guess, what is it you guys you guys do or provide, and just kind of the vision for Kare Youth League and even Rio Hondo Prep?
First and foremost, to make sure that the standards of care are always kept. Which is not a problem because there's so many terrific people, whether it's, Lanny Johnson and John Martin, Chris Horton, or Robert Bray. There's so many terrific members there. And what was different about me, to answer that part of the question, is maybe just due to some history there, I was asked to bring in maybe some outside perspective, you know, uh, and I've really enjoyed it. We have great conversations on the board and how to always make things better and to be, most important, good financial stewards. And there's a huge emphasis on making sure that the standards of care are always moving forward to make sure that um, the teachers are happy, that the coaches are happy, that the players are happy, and of course, just being the financial stewards of the organization. And there's terrific people on that board. There really is. So that's the best way I can answer it. But of all the boards that I've served upon, I am by far the most proud of serving on the care board, because you can walk through the campus and see all those kids smiling and laughing, and even if they're just going to lunch, you just are able to see the beautiful things that happen every single solitary day. And happy kids that's the best report card you can have.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. And as someone who again found the program a little later, I think your kids are grown now and everything. But I think there's almost this, I won't say fear, but there's almost this hesitation with families to send their kid to a Rio Hondo Prep from the care program, or just someone who's heard of it. It's almost this like, well, my kid won't, he won't get the public school exposure or whatever. He won't end up get the college recruiting or something. There's almost this like, that's that small school. It's kind of weird and different. And it's kind of like, my argument is, no, you get so much more out of Rio with all the different, you're going to play football and a
Oh,
band
goodness.
instrument. You know what I mean? You're going to do all, you're going to do it all. And so, and we do have some guys who get noticed, D1 athletes that go places like, just because you go to Rio doesn't mean you're not getting some experience that you wouldn't elsewhere. I think you get so much more.
There is no doubt about it. And if I could go back in time, I would, if I was involved with care earlier, I would have sent my kids, and I would have known that this is by far the best place to put them in. Number one, because care and Rio Hondo Prep, with all the sports, as we're preparing the kids for the future, like you had mentioned earlier, where else are you going to be able to provide your kids with the physical strength, the mental strength, the emotional strength, and the spiritual strength? And that only happens when you have parents and teachers and coaches all with the same beautiful message to give, just a simple direction of moving forward to your kids. When in public schools, with nothing but respect to the public schools,
Yeah.
you don't know what they're hearing. You just don't. And a kid's childhood is far too precious to risk anything. When with care, to know that you're putting them in an environment of not just God's grace, but truly caring people. And I'll go back to what I said before. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the worst thing that happened with my kids that made me feel bad is I would say, well, what do you like most about your school and what do you like least about your school? They would never um, answer with what they like most about it. They would just say, well, there's just not a lot of caring over there. There's just not a lot of caring from the teachers. And I know public teachers have a tough job to do, but kids don't always know that. All they see is the caring and how important that is. So that is something where I don't think my kids got as much out of their high school education as they could have, knowing that their teachers maybe care a little bit more when that's never an issue at Rio Hondo Prep. And again, going back to, I wish I would have sent them to Care. And like I said, well, what else can you ask for? Put them in an environment of caring, wonderful people in the presence of God's grace, and you're working on their physical, their mental, their emotional, and their spiritual development, and you're getting the best person you could get at the end of that time. And talk about being ready for land, not to mention having someone who already is demanding excellence from themselves. What else could you ask for?
You're right.
Practically, pragmatically, emotionally, hypothetically, it doesn't matter. There is no better decision to make than to put your child into that environment. There's far too many weird things out there where you cannot predict what might happen in some of those other environments when you know exactly what's going to happen, right here with Kare and Rio Hondo Prep.
No doubt. And it's crazy because it's been going on for decades. I mean, over half a century now, and it's kind of like it's nothing new. It's the same steady influence of things. And so, yeah, for those people kind of on the fence, really, if you're listening, man, you're not going to get a better experience with your kids and everything than Rio Hondo Prep, and especially that football program that's it's pretty darn special. Mr. Sloan, as far as the board of directors and maybe some of your visions or goals for Kare, for Rio, as someone, again, who 2 years ago really wasn't involved with the organization. Do you have any maybe goals or just kind of aspirations for Kare and Rio, whether it's to get numbers up or just a different kind of involvement or anything? Do you have any visions really for Kare and Rio?
There's a lot of ideas that come up right now, and I would say first and foremost, the priorities are to keep the standards, where they are, if not improve them, and to continue being financial stewards. I can't speak to any one particular thing, but I think that direction, which is about 90% of the board, is what I really want to focus on, because what we have here is so incredibly special. You can't risk anything changing with that. So that's the best way I can answer that question right now. There's a few ideas that happen between here and there, and we kick around ideas, but first and foremost, that's the biggest priority is to keep those high standards, keep incredible people, keep them with the organization, and of course, be good financial stewards.
Yes, I think that's well said, and I think Kare is in great hands. Rio's in great hands with the leadership going to always the best interests of the students and the children, of course. Trying to make the best decisions there. So it's just kind of cool to get some insight here as to kind of the inside everything of how the operation really does work. When usually how different decisions are made, or when a new building goes up and all these things, it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that makes a lot of the magic happen. I know Coach Carson is very grateful for you, sir, for your contributions to the team and your support. And there's many people like you who are very generous with the program, and just who, for lack of a better term, they care greatly. And this is something that we all, myself included, we love doing, and we love being involved in a great organization and contributing any way that we can. And I know you have done that a lot over the years.
It's a pleasure, and I'll thank Robert Bray for bringing me into this incredible organization, and all the other terrific people for keeping me here and getting me to fall in love with it.
Oh, amen. Well, in closing, if you could sum up your excitement for the Rio football season, the defending 2023 champions. We're about to start another season. Truth be told, we're actually recording this right before the first game of the season. So we both got to get to Kare Field, although my commute's going to be a little shorter than yours. But man, can't wait to kick the thing off and can't wait to see how the season unfolds. What about you?
One of my favorite things about our football organization is that uh, our message is the same, to whoever we're playing against. Our defense is going to stop you. We're going to run the ball down your throat. Here's our playbook. Go ahead and stop us because you're not going to do it. So that's probably my favorite part of just Rio Hondo Prep. So pretty much it is say, here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and stop us because you're not going to do it. So, but in addition to that, I want to thank all the incredible teachers, all the incredible coaches, the players, and everybody that makes Kare such an incredible organization and Rio Hondo, a great sports organization.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that. Appreciate you setting some time with me here. And I want to ask. I love asking military guys this, especially if they were in the Army or the Navy. There's a rather important game played every year at the end of November. It's in December actually. As a Army veteran, man, that Army Navy game, West Point versus Naval Academy, you get a chance to take that in every year. And how big of a deal is that to you as far as your football viewing?
Of course, I'm always going to root for Army.
Yeah,
I watch it, and
yeah.
I'm not as fanatical about it as some others would be, but it's always good to see Army win. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
said, West Point. When I got a chance to see how important West Point was and how the officers were trained, it just gives me a deeper connection with them, and of course with my history. Um, yeah, Army's still the best. Sorry.
You gotta love it. Army with two.
Don't tell that to Bill Lee, but
Oh no, no, I know he's a branch of the. He's a Marine, so he's
he's
kind
a
of
Marine,
unique
very
in
much
all
a
that.
Marine,
But
and we
yeah,
talk
all
about
through
that all the time.
and through. He's definition.
Yeah.
Army's with got two straight wins here in 2022 and 2023. So always that's one of my favorite football games of the year to watch and just tune it on. You got guys. They're almost like Rio Hondo guys, just out there, just giving it all they got, and a fun game, knowing they're both going to be teammates. They're going to be teammates in the future. Bill Lee, yeah, you mentioned him. Had him on the podcast, and you met him just through Mount Kare and things of that, or how about?
Yeah, again, Robert Bray, who does so much behind the scenes. We're in the lighting business, so we have a lot of extra lights. And one of the things that we were able to do is donate a whole bunch of LED lighting to Mount Kare. So there
Wow.
was, better lighting. And have you been to Mount Kare?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Oh, okay. So inside the main conference area, there just wasn't enough light. So we were able to brighten it up and bring the energy savings down and just by donating some light. So that's how I first met Bill. And there's nothing not to just like about Bill. He's just such a terrific guy. So whenever he has a project up there, and he does so much uh, that whenever we have some new things that we can donate to Kare, then I'm always finding an excuse to stop up there, and Bill and I will have a 20 or 30-minute conversation, and
Oh yeah.
we do what we can help. But it all started from donating boxes of LED lights to help get the energy costs down and improve the lighting over at Mount Kare.
Yeah, Bill Lee, full of energy, enthusiasm. I guess is the best way to explain him. And again, thank you for your generous contributions. I know you do a lot with the lighting, whether it's at Mount Kare or other areas of Kare Youth League, Rio Hondo. So I think, yeah, and if we're gonna be well lit, it sounds like no matter what it is, different facilities and such. So thank you, Mr. Sloan. This has been a privilege and an honor. Looking forward to seeing you at the game and yeah, just chatting real football. Any chance we get, man, it's gonna be fantastic. I appreciate you coming on today.
Matt, thank you so much for doing this podcast. And like I said, for anybody else, it has been terrific for me, listening to all those people and getting that full, rich 30-year history that they all have. And it's been very beneficial. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Man, that means a lot. It's a blessing to me to know that people are benefited from it. So thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Go Rio!
Go Rio. We'll see you tonight.
Well, between that conversation and the firefighter talk before the game, before the show, I should say, um, I think our boys are ready to go, and I hope the fans, you guys, enjoyed that, got you in the right frame of mind, not only for football, but just what Rio Hondo is, what Kare Youth League is, and for so many people that it has touched, and the young men and women that it has created. For me, I look back and I made plenty of mistakes in my life and everything, but um, thank God I found Rio Hondo is kind of the way I look at it. And in a way, thank God I kind of found it again with this podcast after kind of a little distance from it. And I think a lot of us are grateful to come back and contribute any way we can and to a great organization with all the craziness in the world, the wild. We won't even get into just everything that is 2024. Um, the 21st century, we'll say, is has been wild, and the depreciation, we'll say, of values and things. Um, yeah, thank goodness for Rio Hondo Prep, and thank God indeed. It's interesting that Mr. Sloan was talking about Bill Lee in the conversation there at the very end of the conversation. A few weeks ago when we had this interview, and our heart is our thoughts and our heart is with Bill Lee as Tuesday night at this hour. He's up there fighting that fire and along with the firefighters. So just funny how things work out sometimes. Conversation wise, you tie it all together and it's like, oh wow, we talked about that a few weeks ago, and now that this is being released, it's interesting that it is all relevant. Thank you, Mr. Sloan, so much. Dean Sloan, a tremendous businessman, very successful, someone that has um, found Rio Hondo, found Kare, and fell in love with it. And I think that's a story for so many people. He probably didn't want this to be said, but I'll say it just as a contribution he has made to the football program. Coach Carson informed me when I was asking him about Mr. Sloan. He said that he actually purchased the new headsets that the coaches wear. It was a need. Their old ones were a little out of needed to be upgraded, we'll say. And so Mr. Sloan invested in the team in that way, and he's done other things. And there's so many people, donors and contributions. We don't want to forget that. A lot of people volunteer their time, which is something I do. And it's, honestly, yeah, you put some money into this thing as well. But however you contribute to Rio Football, Kare Youth League, man, if you can just do a little more, that's the way I see it. Like it's late at night here, and I didn't really want to, long. It's been a long day, but I got brothers out there fighting fires. I can turn a computer on and do a podcast. It's not a big deal. So happy to do it as always. Blessed to do this. And to the players out there, I don't know how often you guys listen to these interviews. If you want to hear yourselves more, or the coaches and stuff, or recap the game, that's fine. I get it. I was 16 once also, but just know the lessons you're learning each and every week from your coaches and leaders, and just this crazy thing that is life. It's going to benefit you, man. And whatever you end up doing, I got a feeling there's probably some future firefighters on this team, in some regard, and probably a lot more great leaders, no matter what they end up doing. And we're cheering for you. We're pulling for you. And if you feel a little tired on Friday, a little winded, a little whatever, man, think of those guys fighting fires for us. And I don't want to just continue to hammer on that, but I will. It's my show, and I can do what I want. So to Mr. Sloan, thank you for the fun conversation. Very, very informative. And to the firefighters out there, I don't know when you will hear this, but Godspeed. We're with you, and can't say thank you enough. And every time I look to those, I look to the hills and see the smoke. I just think I got friends up there. I don't know. I don't know what I just do. So I wasn't teammates with all those guys who put on the gear and go do that stuff, but in some ways, just like the Rio Hondo community, the alumni, I feel that connection, which is important here on the podcast for all of us. Once you graduate, you move on, you do something. Hey, some things never leave you, and your relationships and lessons and all those great things at Rio Hondo. It's one of the great things of this podcast is tying it all together and reliving it and being ready to go. So if I forgot some names, I apologize. Those are the ones at the top of my head. I reached out to some people, and we'll be thinking of you guys, praying for you guys. And thank you again. Can't thank you enough. And to everyone else out there, 9/11, 23 years ago, never, ever forget that date. the impact and what it felt like that day, because it was truly horrifying. And I remember not to take it back again, but our junior year, and it was on a Tuesday, and there was thoughts and discussions. Do we play? Do we play our game that Friday? And we did. We ended up playing Bethel Christian. There were American flags everywhere. One of the few times Rio kind of did like a public prayer. I remember Pastor Horton getting up there and doing it with the principal of the other school. And I don't know, it was a memory I'll never forget. And ironically, my teammate that night, Jordan Ross, who I mentioned, Mr. Firefighter, scored 5 touchdowns, 5 different ways: punt return, kick return, rushing, receiving, and interception return. So I don't know, fond memories I have. Just kind of special, tying it all in, 9/11 firefighter, all those things. But yeah, we're fortunate to be blessed to play in America, to play a game on Friday nights. Friday night, finally, right? Excited for that. Even though I'll be rushing from work, guys. But hey, these are the obstacles that we do. It's an honor and a privilege. So we are blessed to play football. We're blessed to be free, and just remember that at all times. Not just 9/11, but 365. And man, I'm sure we'll be thanking some firefighters real soon, rather than make fun of them. But I usually, you guys, all you do is sleep. Oh, you work a couple days a year. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to a lengthy edition of the pregame show, and one that was a little more focused on some current events and things. But Bill Lee, we love you. Fight the good fight up there. Hope to hear from you. Bill is Rain Pollock's uncle, as mentioned in the 4th of July episode, and of course, Rain Pollock's father, Larry Pollock, out there fighting as well. So there is a connection here, and to any of the boys who have family members in the firefighter force. I apologize if I did not know that, but our hearts are with them as well. So let's get ready to play Friday. Honor those firefighters and honor those, those who've paid the ultimate sacrifice for us, and all those good things. And it's one final reason, guys, why winning that national anthem, looking as perfect as you guys do, try to be 1% more perfect every single week, especially on a week like this. Thank you for being serious about that. As young man, I know it may not seem that important, but it does matter. And you heard the Maranatha coach talk about it. He said, wow, they're even buttoned up for the national anthem. So it is meaningful and it matters. So thank you very much for showing respect in that regard, and to being the best. Rio Hondo is the best at a lot of things, right? Very best. The fans travel the best. I think we got the best podcast. I think we got the greatest coaches. And as of now, we'll say I think we got one of the best teams around. So let's go see them play on Friday night, and keep those firefighters in our thoughts and prayers. See you Friday, guys. God bless.